This story is titled, "She Wanted an Open Marriage to Keep Cheating." So I let her dig her own grave while I gathered the truth. My wife cheated on me, then had the nerve to suggest an open marriage so she could keep seeing the guy. And instead of blowing up, I kept my cool and quietly started collecting evidence of her neglect as a mother, all while I secretly filed for divorce and began the custody process. I'm sharing this from a throwaway account for obvious reasons. My real name's not Mark, but we'll stick with that. I'm 35, and my wife, let's call her Sarah, is 33. We've been together 12 years, married for 10, with 2 kids, Lily, our 8-year-old daughter, and Tom, our 6-year-old son. I guess I'm writing this because the last 48 hours have completely flipped my world upside down, and maybe laying it all out here will help me make some kind of sense of it, or at least give me a place to vent. For the past dozen years, I've been a senior project manager at a large commercial construction company, working on high-stakes projects that demand long hours, 10 to 12 on a good day, sometimes 14 or 15 when deadlines are tight, which is often. And even Saturdays are usually workdays for me. It's a demanding job, but it paid well enough to give us a comfortable life. We bought a great house in a solid school district, and Sarah never had to work unless she wanted to. Before we had kids, Sarah was doing well as a freelance graphic designer. She had talent, built up a decent client list, and once Lily was born, we had a long talk about whether she'd keep working or stay home. She said she wanted to be there for the kids full-time, especially in their early years, and I was totally on board with that. My income could support us, and we agreed that having a parent at home was best. After Lily was born, Sarah slowly stopped taking new clients and shifted completely into being a stay-at-home mom, only doing the occasional small project for friends or local causes, more like a creative outlet than actual work. For a while, I really thought we had a solid setup. Sarah ran the household and took care of the kids while I focused on providing, and whenever I was home, I did my best to be present, bath time, bedtime stories, family outings on weekends when work didn't completely bury me. But then things started to change, nothing dramatic at first, just small shifts about 8 or 9 months ago when Sarah said she was feeling isolated and wanted a bit more of a social life, so she reconnected with her college friend Jessica, who started planning girls' nights. In the beginning, it was once a month, dinner or a movie, and I actually thought it was good for her, so I encouraged it and happily took care of the kids on those nights. But once a month turned into every other Friday, and then, over the last 3 months, it was pretty much every Friday and sometimes Saturdays too. I noticed that she stopped mentioning Jessica as often, and instead, new names I'd never heard started popping up. At home, she started acting differently too, nothing huge, just little things you might overlook day to day, like being constantly glued to her phone, smiling at messages, or typing quick replies. Whenever I asked what it was, she'd say it was the group chat or something funny they were planning. She also started putting a lot more effort into her appearance before going out, new outfits, heavier makeup, and she took longer getting ready than she used to. I figured maybe she just wanted to feel good about herself again, and honestly, I didn't think too hard about it, until she added a brand new, complicated password to her phone about 2 months ago. We'd never hidden passwords before, not because we were spying on each other, but because we trusted each other, and it was just easier that way. When I asked about the sudden change, she said it was because of a security update that required a stronger lock, and even though that explanation felt off, I let it go. Then, about 3 weeks ago, I was going through our joint account to match receipts for work expenses when I noticed several charges at a place called Crimson Lounge, a cocktail bar I'd never heard her mention before, and definitely not somewhere I pictured Jessica and the girls going. There were 4 charges over a 6-week span, all on Friday or Saturday nights. I also saw Uber rides to and from an address in a trendy, out-of-the-way part of town. No reason she'd be there, especially not late at night. The spending wasn't huge, but the pattern didn't match her usual behavior, and it made my stomach tighten a bit. But I was buried in a deadline at work and told myself I'd deal with it later. Then came the night that changed everything, just 2 nights ago, another supposed girls' night, and she came home at 3 a.m. I was in bed, pretending to sleep, but wide awake with that gnawing, anxious feeling in my chest. She came in tipsy, humming to herself as she got ready for bed, and when she set her phone on the nightstand face up, it buzzed with a message. I glanced at the screen and saw a preview from someone saved as David H. It said, "Tonight was incredible. Can't stop thinking about you." I didn't react. I didn't yell or throw a fit. I just stared at the message, letting it sink in. Then I calmly asked, "Sarah, "Who's David H.?" She jumped, startled, and when she turned to look at me, she went pale. Her first response was to lie. She said, "David? Oh, he's just a friend of Stephanie's. He's in the group sometimes." But I stayed calm and said, "I saw the message, Sarah. Tonight was incredible. Can't stop thinking about you. That doesn't sound like a casual friend." That's when the truth started to spill out. She sat down on the edge of the bed, facing away from me, and started crying. Through her sobs, she admitted she'd been seeing this guy, David, for about 4 months. They met at Crimson Lounge one night when, apparently, none of her friends actually showed up. Turns out a lot of those supposed girls' nights were just cover for her time with him. She said she felt invisible because I worked so much and that David made her feel seen and appreciated, like she was alive again. She apologized over and over, said she still loved me and didn't want to destroy our family. I didn't comfort her. I just sat there, asking a few quiet questions, while our kids slept in the next room, unaware their whole world was about to be upended. The next morning, after a sleepless night, I moved into the guest room. Sarah looked like a mess, puffy eyes, red nose, still apologizing like her life depended on it. And then she hit me with something I never saw coming. In the middle of all her supposed guilt and sorrow, she asked if we could consider an open marriage. She said she loved me and loved David too, and that maybe this was a way to keep our family together. She could see him honestly, and I could see other people if I wanted to. She framed it like some enlightened, modern solution to a complicated emotional situation, as if this was the grown-up thing to do instead of blowing up our marriage. I just sat there, stunned, trying to process the insanity of what she was asking. Like she wanted to keep her affair going, but this time with my permission. I told her I needed time to think, and now here I am, holed up in my office while the kids watch cartoons downstairs, blissfully unaware, and Sarah's in the kitchen pretending everything's normal, but barely holding it together. My thoughts are a mess. I don't want this open marriage, but if I say no, will she leave and take the kids? How would I even manage them on my own with my work schedule? The idea of full-time single parenting is terrifying. Has anyone else been through something like this? Not just dealing with infidelity, but with the cheater asking to keep the affair going by opening up the marriage instead of ending it? What do I even do next? 3 weeks later, I've gone back and read every single comment and message. Some were blunt, some kind, but all of them gave me clarity. So thank you to everyone who took the time to reach out. A lot of people asked if Sarah ever showed signs of being unhappy before this, or if we tried therapy, and looking back, her increasing nights out and vague talk about feeling stuck were probably warning signs. But she never came right out and told me she felt unloved or unseen, not in a way that made me think we were in trouble. If I asked, she'd just say she was tired or stressed. Therapy wasn't even something we'd seriously considered. I truly believed we were okay. We were busy and sometimes distant, sure, but I thought we were solid. Now I realize that was naive. Her apologies were full of tears and guilt, but when she immediately followed them with that open marriage proposal, it started to feel less like real remorse and more like damage control. She wasn't sorry for cheating. She was sorry she got caught. And once she got caught, she tried to fast-track a setup where she could keep both her lover and our family life intact. The best advice I got was simple. Talk to a lawyer. And I did. Within 48 hours, I found a solid family attorney through a bar referral. I told her it was a pretty extreme idea and that I was still trying to wrap my head around the affair. I made it clear that if we were even going to entertain the idea, it would require real effort, professional guidance, and complete honesty on her part. I explained that I'd need time to think it over, to do some research, and to figure out if I could even begin to consider something like that. I told her the bare minimum would be her being completely honest about David, what their relationship really involved, and exactly what she was expecting from all this. I also mentioned the idea of seeing a couples counselor to help us navigate things, though honestly, I knew deep down it wasn't really about fixing the marriage. I wasn't trying to save what we had. I just needed to slow her down, keep her from doubling down on this path, or hiding even more. Most importantly, I needed time to get my own plan into motion. Following my lawyer's firm advice, I hired a licensed, well-reviewed private investigator. It wasn't a decision I made lightly, but I knew how important it was. Their job was to discreetly track Sarah, who she met with, especially David, how she spent her time away from home, and whether any of it could be considered neglect of the kids or misuse of our shared resources. They've been at it for about 2 weeks now. It's not cheap, but I see it as an investment, something that might help protect both me and the kids down the line. At the same time, I've gotten extremely diligent about keeping records. I set up a secure digital journal, password protected and backed up, where I log daily entries. I jot down when Sarah comes and goes, what she tells me, how engaged she is with Lily and Tom, her mood, and any significant conversations, paraphrased as accurately as I can. I've also been saving any texts or emails that touch on the affair or her plans with David. I keep track of everything I do as well, especially when it comes to parenting. On top of that, I've completely reshaped my schedule to be the primary caregiver. That's honestly been the hardest part to juggle. I had serious talks with my boss and HR, letting them know I was going through a major family situation and needed more stable hours and less travel, at least for the time being. I didn't go into the details of the affair, just emphasized that my kids needed a steady, reliable parent right now. Thankfully, they were more understanding than I expected. They've given me some flexibility, which means I now work focused, intense hours during the day, and then hop back online at night once the kids are asleep. I've taken over all the morning routines, getting Lily and Tom up, fed, dressed, and off to school. I also handle the pickups, whether it's from school or after-school activities. I go to every parent-teacher conference, every doctor's appointment. I cook dinner, help with homework, and handle bedtime. And while yes, all of that definitely helps my case, that's not the main reason I'm doing it. My kids come first. They need consistency, they need someone who shows up, and I'm doing everything I can to be that person. My lawyer also suggested I get a full handle on our finances and secure what I could. I gathered every document I could get my hands on: bank statements, credit card bills, investment info, tax records, property paperwork, all going back 5 years. I also sat down with a financial advisor, someone completely separate from our joint affairs, to figure out where I stand and to get ready for whatever might be coming. I opened a bank account in my own name where my paycheck now goes. I'm still paying for our shared household expenses out of the joint account, but I'm keeping a close eye on it for any unusual activity on Sarah's part. When I told her I was open to at least thinking about her proposal, she looked genuinely relieved, like a huge weight had been lifted. She really seems to think I'm on board with this new life she's imagining. Since then, she's been surprisingly open about David. She'll just casually say things like, "David and I are trying that new restaurant Friday," or "David had a tough day." Every time I hear his name mentioned so casually in our home, it hits like a punch in the gut. It takes everything I've got not to react. Despite the boundaries I laid out, she hasn't made any effort toward the transparency or rebuilding of trust that I said would be required. Her version of being open is simply informing me of her plans with him, like I'm supposed to be okay with it. The private investigators have been giving me steady updates. They're professionals and have been very discreet. So far, their reports confirm what I suspected. Sarah and David are meeting up often, usually during the day when she claims to be running errands. They've taken photos of them together at restaurants, in parks, and even entering and leaving an apartment building that they believe is David's place. What really worries me are 2 recent incidents from just the past week. In both cases, Sarah made last-minute childcare arrangements, once during Tom's soccer practice pickup and another time when she said she had to run an errand. Both times, she was actually with David. These events are being thoroughly documented. If there's any silver lining in all of this, it's the deeper connection I've built with Lily and Tom. They've really responded to the consistency in my attention. Lily, who's sharp for her age, has even said things like, "Mommy goes out a lot now," and "You always pick us up, Daddy." I like that. I keep my responses light and positive. I never say anything bad about Sarah. Honestly, though, I'm running on fumes. I'm balancing a demanding job, full-time parenting, and the emotional weight of pretending everything's fine. Sleep feels like a luxury I can't afford. The atmosphere at home is strange, almost ghostly. It's like we're just 2 people sharing a space, connected only by the kids and a shared past. Sarah acts cheerful most of the time, almost like she feels free now that her secret's out and she believes she's getting what she wants. She chats about groceries, school reminders, small talk stuff, but never brings up our relationship, our past, or what's really happening. The only time she talks about the future, it's in this vague, dreamy way, saying things like, "People make all kinds of arrangements work nowadays." For what it's worth, my lawyer is pleased with how things are progressing. The evidence we're collecting is solid, and the plan we're executing is on track. My lawyer emphasized that building a clear and consistent record of me being the primary caregiver, alongside proof of Sarah's ongoing affair and any related neglect or misuse of funds, would put me in a much stronger position if things turned into a contested divorce, especially when it came to custody and support issues. I honestly didn't know how long I could keep up the act. Every day felt like a performance. But for the time being, that was the plan. The goal was straightforward: protect my kids, secure their future, and, if the marriage had to end, make sure it ended in a way that reflected the truth, not some romanticized version of freedom built on my silence. Thanks again for giving me the space to write all this down. I knew the road ahead would be long, and now that I've reached the end of it, I want to share how it all played out. Final update. It's been 14 months since my original post. Hard to believe, and just over a year since my first update. The journey between then and now has been tough, but the legal chapter of this story has finally closed. I wanted to share the outcome, both for my own sense of closure and for the people who followed along and offered support. The 3 months after my last update were probably the hardest part of the whole thing. I kept pretending to be considering Sarah's open marriage idea while we still lived together. Meanwhile, the private investigator kept working, compiling a solid and detailed file on her behavior. Sarah didn't just continue her relationship with David, she became even more open about it. She started staying out late during the week, saying she had work events or social outings, but the PI's reports showed she was usually with him. There were weekend afternoons at his place, and even a so-called wellness retreat with a girlfriend that turned out to be a romantic getaway with David to a nearby resort. During all this, I fully stepped into the role of the only active parent. I managed everything: school routines, homework, meals, doctor appointments, playdates, emotional support. Sarah's involvement dropped to almost nothing. She was either glued to her phone or just not around. One example that really stuck with me: Lily had the lead role in her school play. We'd had the date marked on the calendar for months. 2 days before, Sarah suddenly said she had a work thing she couldn't miss. The PI later confirmed she was out having dinner with David. I documented her absence and the quiet disappointment on Lily's face. And there were plenty more moments like that, each one painful, not just for legal purposes, but because it showed how far she drifted from our family. Emotionally, it took a heavy toll. I had to keep it together for the kids, keep acting neutral around Sarah, all while managing the constant stream of information from the PI and dealing with my own grief and frustration. I barely slept. I was constantly on edge. After almost 5 months of this, my lawyer and I decided it was time to move forward. We had a mountain of evidence: timelines, photos, videos, bank records showing cash withdrawals and purchases that matched her outings with David, and detailed logs of my full-time parenting versus her near absence. My lawyer was confident, not just about proving adultery, but about making a strong case for full custody and limiting any spousal support. We planned the filing carefully. I secured a lease on a new place, still in the same school district, so the kids wouldn't have to change schools. On the day we filed, Sarah was supposedly at a yoga workshop, though the PI confirmed she was with David again. While she was out, I moved Lily and Tom, along with the essentials, into the new home. That evening, she came back to an almost empty house and was served with the divorce papers and a motion for temporary primary custody. I immediately set a rule of no direct contact. Everything would go through lawyers or the court-mandated co-parenting app. Her reaction, according to what I heard through legal channels, was shock, then fury. She felt betrayed, convinced I had been warming up to the idea of an open marriage. Finding out that I had just been playing along while gathering evidence hit her hard. The divorce was contested, though it didn't drag on as long as it could have, thanks to the sheer amount of proof we had. Sarah came out swinging through her lawyer. She wanted joint custody, a hefty chunk of spousal support, and a bigger share of the assets. Her team tried to argue that the PI's findings were a privacy violation and painted me as spiteful. But when we got to court, my lawyer laid everything out. The PI's testimony and documentation were clear and hard to refute. My records, school logs, doctor appointments, and receipts all lined up with my role as the primary caregiver. It wasn't just about the affair, it was a pattern of putting David before her own kids. Her spending of marital funds on him helped reinforce that narrative. The hearings were tense at times, especially under cross-examination, but the facts were solid. Sarah's efforts to explain away her absences didn't hold up against the documentation. Mediation was attempted but failed quickly. She wouldn't budge from her demands. The judge issued a final ruling a couple of months ago, and it was thorough. 1. Custody. I was awarded sole legal custody and primary physical custody. The judge clearly stated that the evidence showed I had been the consistent, stable parent, while Sarah had repeatedly put her personal life above her children's needs. 2. Visitation. Sarah was given a step-up visitation plan, initially every other weekend and one midweek evening visit, but those first visits had to be supervised at her expense. The judge had concerns about her recent detachment. After 3 months of compliant visits, the supervision requirement was lifted. Exchanges were to happen in public or through a neutral third party. 3. Spousal support. Sarah wanted 40% of my net income for 10 years. Her lawyer argued that she'd been out of the workforce raising kids. We countered with her marketable skills, her age, and most importantly, her recent conduct. The judge awarded her transitional alimony for just 18 months and only a fraction, around 15%, of what she'd requested. He noted that her actions had significantly undermined her claim. 4. Assets. The assets were mostly divided per state law, but the judge made an adjustment in my favor to account for the money she'd spent on her affair, trips, gifts, fancy dinners. It wasn't a huge amount, but it was a formal acknowledgement of her misconduct. The house was sold, and I used my share to put a down payment on the home where the kids and I live now. From what I hear through the co-parenting app and the occasional mutual contact, Sarah moved in with David after the divorce and the sale of the house. They're in an apartment, and her financial reality looks very different now. The alimony is small, and it doesn't seem like David's income or her freelance work is enough to maintain the lifestyle she once had. What started as an exciting romance seems to be hitting the reality wall: shared bills, limited funds, and the aftermath of her choices. Her visits with Lily and Tom are consistent, but the exchanges, handled by my sister or a trusted friend, are described as strained but civil. The kids are polite with her, but their emotional home is with me. As for us, life has found its rhythm. Our home is smaller, but it's filled with laughter and peace. I changed jobs to something with more stable hours and far less travel. It came with a pay cut and maybe a slower path upward, but I'm present now in every way that matters. And the kids? They're thriving, doing great in school, surrounded by good friends, and bouncing back from everything with resilience I admire every day. We're closer than ever. To everyone who's been here through this journey, thank you. This will be my final post. From here on out, my focus is on raising my children and building a good life with them, one day at a time.